Hi guys, it's Phil here. Welcome to today's Tuesday Let's Draw. Now, it's the 31st of March. We're still here in the shed, on shed cam. And the last drawing session that we did was on using 1 point perspective. We're actually going to expand on doing that. One of the things that I talked about was how you can use a single point perspective to construct much more complicated shapes. We did a gaming chair, which was sort of geometrically very simple. Today we're going to be looking at drawing a shoe, a trainer, sneaker, I believe you guys call them in the States. And we're going to use 1 point perspective to construct this. So the first thing that we're going to do is, I'm not going to use a ruler for today because the guidelines are just going to be that, just guidelines. But I'm going to draw my shoe just here. So I'm going to draw basically the literal footprint of the shoe, and I'm going to draw a center line that goes across just here. And we'll come to that Y in a second. So what I'm going to do, anytime you're going to design a shape, often this is my starting point for almost everything that I draw, which is that I know that it's going to occupy a certain amount of three-dimensional space, and I'll just draw the box that it fits in either 1, 2 or 3 point perspective. So we're just using 1 point perspective, and with a shoe this perspective works really nicely. So I'm just going to draw the box that this shoe fits in. Not literally the shoe box, but so that's the back of the cube that this object fits in. That's the front of the box, and this, which is the midpoint, we're going to put just here. So the sort of base of the shoe. So if we're going to draw it from looking at the outside of the shoe, you know what I mean? Like, we're not inside the shoe. That's not what I mean. I mean, if you can imagine, this is the left shoe, and we're looking at it from the left side. So it's going to have just a curve there. This bit here is going to be obviously that shape, but we're not going to see that. It's going to just be implied. Now, what we're doing with this, we've got our center line here. So what I'm going to do is, on the center line, I'm going to draw like the cross section of the shoe. So if we were looking at the shoe exactly from the side, this is what we would see. And I've discovered that in order for this to kind of work, you have to emphasize any sort of peculiarities of the shape of the shoe here. So this sweep just here has to be more swept than if you were just sort of imagining how you would have to do it, because of the way that the perspective works. If it's not quite well swept like this, it will end up looking, I guess, weird. So when I've drawn this in the past, and I'll try and maybe upload it, we'll have a shoe which has got much more of an arc suggested here because of the way that the perspective works. So we've got quite a flat sort of a shoe. The toe lifts, that's something that took me a while to figure out. When you're drawing shoes, you've got to have like a lift at the front, otherwise it looks weird, and a little bit of a lift at the back. Laces here, we have like a toe box just here. The sweep like this. So now what we're going to do is sort of project our 1 point perspective out to all of the sections that we're going to have here. So for example, like this little arc on the foot is going to be here. This tongue of the shoe is going to be just here. The back of the shoe is going to be there. And the laces are going to be just here. So what these are doing is just creating the guide for how we're going to actually draw the shoe. Drawing the shoe is what we're going to do now. So we just try and get as good a visualization of how it's going to look as possible. So always when we're drawing, we're bearing in mind how this perspective is going to be sort of represented. So we've got the front of the sort of toe box just here. Just going to draw sort of a ghost of the lace silhouette here. So this is the way that the tongue is going to look. And again, this following the lines of the perspective. So you can see that this curve just here, if we project it back, the same point on the curve is going to be here to here. Same point on this curve is going to be from here to here. So we just join these up. And this curve goes around just here. So we've got quite a lot of detailing here at the back. So I'm just drawing sort of the like I said, the outline of the silhouette in for the details where the points are going to have to meet. So if you remember when I was talking about how to do these drawings before, a lot of the time what I'm doing is working out where sort of the key corners are for the artwork, where if you visualize it as a kind of dot to dot, where the dots are is obviously quite an important thing to work out. But you can see already that we've got the geometric shape of the object, the shoe is sort of more or less defined. And it looks like it's got some sense of three-dimensional depth. It's just a case of going in now and making sure that all of these lines are sort of connected. So we've got the baseline of the sole in here. That looks a little bit weird now. Maybe let's just pull that in a little bit. I'm just going to put some surface details in now. Just putting a few extra little details in. Just going to put some kind of tread on the bottom to give it a little bit more grip, I guess. Just going to go around one more time. I'm going to just toughen up the silhouette a little bit so that it's a bit clearer. Now it can be quite nice to... I've not really seen anybody talk about this, but sometimes when you're drawing something like this, you draw everything. You draw all of the detail, connect all the dots, connect all the lines, make sure that you've got this real solid silhouette like this. But other times, especially, this is used especially in footwear design. You'll see transport designers use this a lot, footwear designers use this a lot. It's when you're designing something with which there are a whole load of existing sort of conventions. So when you're looking at a shoe, you know what it is, you know what shape it is, you don't have to use your imagination for that. So a lot of the time people will ghost in details. So for example, I've tried to do it here, I'm trying to get into the habit of doing it, so I didn't just explicitly draw all of the laces. I just tried to sort of ghost them in and imply them. Because when you look at it, you know what they are. I don't need to be like, okay guys, let me visually explain what laces are. Okay, because you've got a pair of shoes and you know what they are. And so I've been drawing a whole load of shoes, and more you can get away with doing this. So kind of part of it is, this is one of the reasons why when I talk about doing this dot to dot and working out where the sort of the critical dots are, that once you've got those sort of hard points down, the dots that everything is connected to, then more and more you can imply the connection between them visually more than you can just completely explain. Let me show you what I mean. So let's say we're drawing a crappy cube, okay? So my instinct is to draw just all of the lines for it. But if we just work out where all of the corners for it are, and draw these in, so like I said, we're going to do the dot to dot. Then you can more like imply the connection between these points rather than explicitly drawing every single one of them. So certainly maybe the silhouette you want to bulk out, or there's certain lines that you want to make stronger because they're like gravity lines that show the base of the object. But other sections you might want to leave more sort of implied, rather than sort of explicitly drawing all of them. So let's jump back to the shoe. So I've tried to do that in certain parts on here. One of the things is it gives it quite a loose feel. I talk sometimes about how you don't want to make everything look super finished always, because if you're in an early stage of development on a design, if you go to a client with something that looks extremely polished and extremely finished, even though you guys have got the technical chops to do it, it communicates a different stage of development to the one that you're actually in. And it makes the client look at the artwork and the design that you're talking about in a completely different way, because they start thinking in terms of amends to what you've done rather than actual sort of basic design stuff, which is the stage you might be at. So doing this, sort of making certain parts of the geometry sort of implicit rather than fully explaining them, allows you to make the artwork very clearly more of a sort of overall thing rather than just talking about specific details. So let's just put a bit of shaping inside there. Okay, so look, you know me, I'd love to spend the entire rest of the day just faffing about with this, but rather than doing that, I'm just going to faff about with it for a few more minutes. So, I mean, look, you can look at this and tell me, like, I'm not like Mr. Footwear Designer. It's just not something that I'm maximally interested in. I just wanted to show, somebody had asked, and I wanted to show you guys how using the 1-point perspective technique you can draw something which is sort of geometrically quite complex. A lot of people shy away from drawing shoes, certainly sort of in this three-dimensional view, because they are quite complicated. But by reducing it down to its sort of the box that it exists in, working out some of the different projections, then you can get this, I don't know, this nice three-dimensionality to the object that does communicate more than if it was just a dead square on the side. So I must admit, I've drawn a few shoes over the last sort of like couple of days since I've been thinking about how we're going to do this. So I did a tutorial which went through this. Now, I drew what I thought was a nice curve for this, But when you're doing your shoes, when you're drawing from the side, you have to sort of emphasize certain features of it. So this curve at the top, if you can't really see, but I just draw it more or less straight, and then when you rotate it around, it just looks weird. It looks wrong. This is like a skate shoe, which is cool if that's what you're designing. But if your goal is for it to look like a more contemporary trainer, then that's not exactly right. You have to emphasize that curve. I emphasize the curve more on this, so you can see that it's got much more of an emphasized curve just here. And also you can see this is very loose. I've done almost minimal construction because I didn't have to draw the box because I understood how it was going to go. And also a lot more of the shape of it, the content of it, is ghosted in using this sort of implicit design sort of thing that I was talking about before. So give this a go. Do use a shoe. The good thing about shoes is that you've got them. So if you ever need to have those as a reference, maybe try using one of your existing shoes and designing, creating it in 3 dimensions like this. The 1 point perspective works nicely for this because basically we're working from dead on. So this is the problem with doing 1 point perspective. If this was 3 or 4 point perspective, 2 or 3 point perspective, it would have more sort of vertical perspective, or if you're drawing it at 3/4, then it would be slightly correcter in perspective. But this is not bad for a shoe because a shoe is very flat and you don't need to go into a great deal of detail in terms of the overall construction with the perspective. So it suits doing this kind of 1 point perspective. So I'm gonna wrap it up more or less here. I'm not gonna like belabor my shoe too much. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the camera just to capture this, and I'm gonna do a render on Photoshop, and we'll jump into the render. Once I've done it, I guess I'll upload that and you guys can check it out. So relatively short one today. I was gonna stream, but the upload speed at the moment is absolutely atrocious. This morning, so about 45 minutes ago, the upload speed here in Marquee Harbs was about 9 megasecond. But then as people in the local area start coming online, the upload speed drops down. And just as I was about to come online and stream, it was at 0.2 megasecond, which is way too long. I could probably stream like a 1 pixel animation. So we've done this. We don't have the luxury of you guys asking questions in the chat or on the Discord, but of course you can ask questions on the Discord, and if you ask questions on the comments, I'm going to be online. You guys can email me if you know what my email address is, if you're one of my students. I would love to see your version of not this shoe but a shoe in this 1 point perspective, and if you join us later on, we're going to be looking at how to produce a lovely render in Photoshop. And I'll show you guys something that I meant to show you when we were rendering the chair, but I got so sidetracked by all kinds of different stuff. And we will look at how to do the stitching, because I've got a really nice trick for doing stitching that's actually going to work better on this artwork than it would have worked on the chair. So I'll see you guys later on. Enjoy drawing your chair and stay safe, guys.